Tonight, Maui anesthesiologist Gerhardt Konig takes the stand in his own defense in the wake of powerful testimony from both his ex-wife and son. With closing arguments expected this week, could he snatch victory from the jaws of defeat? Plus, accused healthcare CEO assassin Luigi Mangione gets a delay in federal court, but not the one his defense was hoping for. Will the prosecution be able to salvage this case before a looming trial later this year? All this tonight on Courtroom Confidential. Good evening and welcome. It is April 1st, everybody. April Fool's Day. But don't worry, this is all for real. Everything that you're going to hear tonight is for real. It's April 1st, 2026, and this is Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you all so much for being here. Chicago Marie, Ali Foley, Alicia K. Mayo, Court Lurker, Kathy Mama Bear. I'm really appreciative of you guys being here because I know that there's some pretty heavy duty testimony taking place in a case that you've all been following very closely. So I appreciate you. This is the thing when you have a schedule, sometimes you got to stick to it. Here's the deal though. We know that Gerhardt is testifying. We are watching it. If there's anything that's just groundbreaking, we're gonna break in and try to show you some of that where we can. But we're going to talk about the case and where this is all headed and whether or not he can actually turn things around with his testimony tonight. To everybody who's new, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate you. If this is your first time, let me introduce myself. My name is Joshua Ritter. I'm a former prosecutor with the LA District Attorney's Office. I was there for 10 plus years before I left to go into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And this is Courtroom Confidential, where we try our best to present to you both sides of the courtroom, both sides of the story, both sides of the issues, and we hope that we do that. And this is our show, Wednesday Night Live, appropriately named because it's on Wednesday at night and it's live, where it's our midweek check-in on all things true crime related, and we've got a very good show for you tonight. So, hello to everybody in the chat. Hello to everybody watching on Facebook and watching on X. We're so glad to have you here this evening. Let me tell you what to expect for tonight. First of all, we're going to run a poll because we know there's a lot of stuff going on. We're not going to have enough time to cover everything, so I want to know from you what you're most interested in. Here's the cases for the poll. Number one, Lindsay Clancy. The judge denied her request to bifurcate the trial between the guilt phase and the insanity phase. I'm going to call it that. Well, we could talk about that. I think that's very interesting. Shanna Gardner, number two. Her attorneys have this bizarre plan for how they're going to separate the trial, but not separate the trial. We'll talk a little bit about that and what consequences that may have and the judge's reaction to all of that. And then number three, Ted Bundy. If you thought you'd never hear that name on this channel, well, think again, because he recently was linked to yet another murder from 1974. So we'll talk about those latest developments. Number one, Lindsay Clancy, two, Shanna Gardner, and three, Ted Bundy. That is your poll that we will run this evening. But first up is Gerhardt Konig. We'll talk about the latest in that case. Luigi Mangione, there's a development in that case I think worth discussing. And we're very excited to tell you that our special guest for this evening is Paul Mauro, my good friend and the co-host of the weekly Rap Sheet. I'm honored to be a part of that project along with him. So stay to the end. We have announcements. There's stuff we don't want you to miss, especially about this coming weekend. And take a deep breath. It's hump day. You've made it. It's April Fool's. Take a deep breath. You're going to get through the rest of this week. Hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this with anyone that you think might enjoy it. Lori Finney, thank you so much for the super chat. For the chat says, I'm Jubar, juiced up beyond all recognition. See, now this is the kind of stuff I love. I'm going to use that. Jubar. I am Jubar, everybody. Gina Gilmore says, become a member and get the privilege of buying the extra special Crime Con t-shirt. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment too. So thank you so much for that, Gina. And Derek Sherman says, hey, Josh, FYI, the Courtney Clenny case has been continued until the end of August. We are aware of this. There will be another status hearing set for May. And that's from one of my CC dudes. Thank you so much, Derek. We'll talk about how that's going to affect things for us. So stay tuned, like I said, for the announcements. But without further delay, let me bring on our guest for this evening. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. Before we begin, Paul, we're going back to the moon. How excited are you about that?
Well, you know what? And since you bring it up, I actually am of an age that it's one of my dimmest memories, but I actually remember sitting on the floor on the old cheap linoleum, peeling linoleum in the house I grew up in, and watching the first moon landing. And now I have to listen to people that I know in my neighborhood tell me it never happened. And the whole thing was a CIA scam. I don't know what to make of that. But I actually do remember the great age of going to the moon. It's very exciting. I support all of this stuff. I know we got problems here at home, etc. But the idea that not going into space somehow equates to us solving things here, I think, is a false equivalency. It's not like you take the money from NASA and all of a sudden it's going to go into law enforcement. I find it very exciting. I'm a little bit of a geek in this area. I like this stuff.
I think it's cool too. I'm a geek about it too. Listen, if we faked it before, then we're going to fake it really good again. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, how are we going to fake Mars? How are we going to fake that one, right?
Oh, don't worry. They've got CGI now. They'll take care of all that. Don't worry.
That's true. That's true.
And to your point, it's like, yeah, we got a lot going on, but I feel like we can all get behind this, right? This is one of those unifying things. We're going back to the moon. We may not be on the metric system still, but we're going back to the moon.
Yeah, it's true. And listen, we didn't land. This is the kind of thing we did in the 60s, which is just orbit the moon. So we're kind of starting over. I mean, it's better technology, obviously, as you famously hear. The technology that was used, the computers that we used to send us to the moon the first time, don't hold a candle to the phone that you're holding in your hand. So this should be more meticulous. It should be better. And what I really am excited about is that, and hopefully we'll all get to see it in our lifetimes, is that they are looking to do this in a permanent way so as to build a permanent space station on the moon, which has no gravity and very little and no atmosphere, and then use the moon as a launch point for reaching out even further. And look, this is the closest thing we have to the age of exploration. We are kind of in a position where the Europeans were in the 1400s when they started looking across the ocean and saying, wow, I wonder what's on the other side of this. Very exciting. I hope I live to see it. That said, I am not accepting the invitation for the one-way ticket to Mars that Musk has put out.
Short list, though.
No, I know you offered my name up. Yeah, and thanks for that, by the way. But there are people who have accepted, and supposedly we will see over the next 10 years a Musk-inspired mission to Mars that is a one-way trip. Can you imagine? Boy, you must have a real tough marriage. There's a segue for you into the Konigs. That's got to be a tough marriage. So you know what? I'll get on that ship anytime. Let's go.
Had he known about that, maybe he wouldn't have made some life choices that were not turning out so well for him right now. That is a great segue. Let's get into Gerhardt Konig. So he is actually on the stand right now. Just to catch everybody up on this, if they're not already following this thing, he is accused of attempted murder. So he tried to murder his wife, but because of that, interestingly, had he pushed her off of that cliff, I don't know if they would have solved this case, right? People fall off of cliffs all the time.
Yeah.
She survives. He tries to beat her over the head with a rock, or does beat her over the head with a rock. She survives. She testifies against him. And earlier this week, his own son testified against him.
Yeah.
I want to play you just a short, it's about 90-second clip from some of this testimony, because to me, and I think you feel the same way, this might be the whole case, is the son. You've got the wife. She's, I thought, incredibly good, but she's also, the adverse party. This is a person who doesn't really have a dog in the fight, as it were. Let's listen to a little bit of what he said.
What did the defendant tell you during that call, as close to word for word as you can remember?
That he would not be making it back to Maui and take good care of the younger kids, and that Ari, my stepmom, had been cheating on him, and that he tried to kill her. During that call, the next plan that he said was to jump off the cliff.
Second phone call at 11:46. What did the defendant tell you, if anything?
He asked me if I had told anybody, and I said yes, and I told him who I had told. And then he said that he was just going to jump and said that a couple times.
How did the second call end?
With him saying, with the defendant saying, I'm going to go before the police catch me.
Did the defendant tell you anything else about his state of mind or what he was thinking?
He said he was at the end of his rope, thought about suicide for the last couple months leading, or for the months leading to the 24th.
Here's the thing that stood out to me. His defense is that she attacked him, that they had a fight about this emotional affair that she was having, not a physical affair, but she was doing some flirting and texting, and she fully admits to that. But that caused a fight where she then attacked him, and then he had to defend himself against her. Problem is, according to the Sun, he didn't mention one thing about that. Right? I mean, isn't that the most glaring part of it, is what he doesn't say during the phone call with the Sun? He doesn't say, your stepmom attacked me and I had to defend myself, unfortunately.
Of course. And, you know, if you really review what happened here, the son is blood to him. The mother's a stepmom. And yet he sides with her.
Yeah.
And you can't even bring in, or it'll be difficult to bring in, the idea that for some reason there was an adversarial relationship. You know, the relationship, let's say, with the son was frayed. They weren't getting along. So the son was looking to do his father because he cut off his allowance or whatever. But in this case, it's tough to make that call for the following reasons. The first thing the father did, apparently, was to call his son to confess all of this, which argues a strong relationship, right? So if you're going to say, well, you know, well, the son's just trying to do you because he's mad at you because you guys had a frayed relationship. Well, then why did he call him twice? And I think a thing that you're going to see almost certainly if I'm running this case as the prosecutor in the close, in my closing argument, one of the things I'm going to do is construct a narrative wherein the father calls the son the first time, tells him what he tells him, which is, I tried to kill her. I'm going to do this before the cops get me. I'm going to jump off this cliff, etc. And then he calls again. And the first question to him is, did you tell anybody? Mm-hmm. Arguing very strongly to me that the father got cold feet against jumping off the cliff, which anybody who's worked, I mean, you've probably been at scenes, you know, when you were a DA, etc. Anybody who's ever gone to a jumper, most jumpers don't jump. You know, they get up there, they look down, they say, whoa, this was a bad idea. Maybe things aren't so bad. I'm not jumping off of this 12th floor building. Right. So they get cold feet. So this guy looked down at the cliff, which obviously was very high because he expected it to kill her, and said to himself, ugh, maybe this isn't such a great idea. I'm losing my guts for this. And then he calls the son again to try to clean it up. So to me, that's a very compelling narrative here. And when you get the fact that the son is blood to the father and not the mother, it feels to me like the son just buried him here. And so I think this is going to be, no pun intended, a very steep hill to climb for Gerhardt here.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point. The point about him being dad's son, not her son, is abundantly clear. But you're right. Of all the people in the world that he could have called in this crisis of a moment,
right,
where perhaps he was even thinking about taking his own life in those moments. I mean, here the whole thing went sideways, right? He was going to push her off of the cliff, and then maybe if that didn't work, he was going to inject her with something and then push her off the cliff. Who knows what? The whole thing goes sideways for him.
Yeah.
And in that crisis moment, he calls his son and entrusts his son with the care of the other kids. He says, take care of your little siblings.
Take care of the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
If you want to say this is a person in their most honest moments, that was probably it, where he's admitting, I tried to kill her, and doesn't say it was to save my own life. Yeah.
And if you're sitting with a jury is also, you're hearing not only what you just described, right, which argues a very sort of unguarded moment. He's saying, I got nothing to lose at this point. I'm at the end of my rope. That's the term. And then he calls back to try to clean it up. But what you also see is a son, in a way, advocating for the father. Because one of the things the son says is, I talked him out of it, or tried to talk him out of it. I said, don't jump off, don't jump off, don't jump off. So the son is telegraphing to the jury yeah, he's still my blood. He's still my father. I didn't want to see him kill himself. But that said, I'm being honest about what he told me here. And as you and I discussed before, it's a hearsay exception, hearsay being truth of the matter asserted from outside the courtroom. That is to say, it goes back to English case law. You didn't want to convict somebody on somebody coming into court as a witness and saying, hey, this guy told me he did it. That's not good enough. But hearsay has a lot of exceptions. And in this case, the exception is admission by a party opponent. In other words, the bad guy admitted it. Bad guy in quotes because he's not convicted yet. We get that. The point is this. You have somebody very close to the father who still very clearly cares about the father because he talked him out of jumping off the cliff, and yet at the same time is willing to say, he told me he did it. A very steep hill to climb. Again, as I said, look, I don't know what the composition of the jury is, et cetera here, but this one's going to be very, very tough. I'm actually surprised it went to trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where it went to trial because he what else does he have to lose? I mean, right. I don't know we don't know obviously what the offer was ahead of time, but I don't think, to me, it's interesting. I was talking with another attorney about this today, and sometimes things go to trial, not because you think you're going to win, but because you've got a client who's got something to say. And this guy seems like he's got something to say. And I still think to this day, staring down the face of prison time, serious prison time, he wants the world to know he was cheated on. I really feel like that's what it is. He's testifying right now. So we're going to get into a little bit of what I was able to watch before we went on this live stream in just a moment. But first, let me thank Eroy. Thank you so much, Eroy, for the gifted memberships. That's so very kind and generous of you. Farm Girl, thank you for the gifted membership. Very kind and generous of you. Jonna Moore, thank you for the super chat. Says, this is the very best. Welcome to Paul. Oh, see, Paul? Hey, John.
There you go. There you go. I'll take it.
Susan Riley has been a member for 2 months. Everybody says, super damn juice tonight, Mr. Paul Mauro and Mr. Joshua Ritter. Oh, how very formal. Thank you.
I like that thing. They said me first. I like that.
So he gets on the stand, and usually you do a little bit of a buildup with the client, with the defendant. Who are you? Where'd you come from? Tell us how you met. Tell us.
Humanize them a little bit. Yeah,
humanize them a little bit, and they're doing a lot of that. But you can already see it's going to get into this whole idea of she cheated on me, and she didn't. I don't even think he believes. Well, maybe he does believe that it turned physical, because at one point she takes a business trip to South Africa along with the guy that she had this little flirtation with, and he can't get a hold of her one night, and therefore his mind starts to race. But it's first of all, if you're trying to read through the lines of this defense, they're almost trying to say she had it coming, which is a very strange tactic to take, right? Like, she's a cheater, therefore I beat her over the head with a rock. I don't care who the jury's made up of. Probably not going to be all that convincing to the jurors.
No, I don't think so. And that's actually why I asked earlier. I don't know the composition of the jury, but you're right. It should be irrelevant here. Certainly the women should, you would think, say, all right, whether that happened or not, that doesn't mean you attack her and beat her head in with a rock. Right. But even the men, unless they're completely psychotic, are going to say, hey, look, dude, divorce her. All right. You already been through it once, apparently, because this is a second marriage for him, apparently. Right. So, look, you know how it goes. Yeah, you're older now and all that stuff, but you're a good looking young man who's a doctor. I mean, a guy like that, his feet aren't even going to hit the ground. He's going to scoop some nurse. So I just don't get the real impetus here that he had to kill her, other than the idea. And I think this will be part of the summation as well. It's going to be delicate to do it, but there's a lot of ego involved, right? Doctors are, I think they have to have a big ego because they're making life and death situation calls. I don't begrudge them that. But that said, doctors, let's be frank, have pretty big egos. And it's almost as if, you're not going to cheat on me. So I'm, Gerhardt Konig. Nobody treats Gerhardt this way. So I really get the feeling that this was going to be a little bit about him winning, and that's why they're going with the defense that you're talking about. I don't find that compelling. But I got a question for you, because I couldn't find it in any of the research I did I'm like aware of the case, but before I came on the air, I crammed on it. But I couldn't find anything relative to the following. Did they find the syringe that she's
No.
talking about? They didn't,
No.
right? All right. That's why it's not in any of the
might
report.
be, in my view, that's probably why it's not a first degree attempted murder, right? Because I mean, there, all of this,
Right.
she came after me. I had to defend myself. Even as far-fetched as that is, that goes out the window if you brought a syringe with up to the trail, right?
Right.
In fact, no one else even sees it. There are some eyewitnesses, more like ear witnesses, who hear her screaming and kind of see something taking place up on the trail.
Right.
They don't see a syringe. If he had one, ditches it somewhere along the line. So the prosecution, I think, was smart by not trying to go too overboard with their charges here, because they don't have the syringe.
Right.
It's only from her testimony. I believe her testimony, but that's the only evidence they have of it.
Right.
But
so I would have done the same. I would have undercharged it, unless, and one of the first things I would have done if I was sitting with a DA is I would have said, go to his hospital and pull every video you can and see, if we can get any record of him leaving at a weird time, or listen, hospitals. Say it again.
Invoicing drugs. I mean, you can't
exactly.
pull those drugs off of the shelf, right? Don't they have to sign all that stuff out? I hope.
They do, but it's kind of forgets. Like, I can tell you, a lot of stuff happens in hospitals, especially in New York City. Weird stuff happens in hospitals. Weird stuff happens in cabs. It's just how it is. It's just, I don't know what, the dynamic is, but you get in hospitals, in the stairwells and in the basement, you get you have rape cases and all kinds of crazy stuff. Any cops who've ever worked around hospitals know that, it's a place you bring people who need treatment, of course, but you get a lot of crazy things that happen there. And one of the reasons why is the kind of inventory you're talking about is not great. It's only as good as people checking on it, and everybody's busy. They're overworked. They're working double shifts. And so things go MIA. And so at some point, he very quietly steals some Ropanol and a syringe you can get as a dime a dozen. They probably give them out free in Maui for the drug addicts. So you got that, and then all he has to do is do what he needs to do. So the only other thing I would say relative to first degree and the idea that it was premeditated is the fact that, and I always go back to this, I know it's tiresome, but the digital stuff that juries want these days, there are some instances here apparently of him Googling things relevant to how to get away with it. And to me, juries in this day and age find that stuff very compelling.
Very, very compelling. Yeah. But I think you made an excellent point about doctors. And listen, this is not all doctors. If we have doctors in the chat,
you told me off the air you hate all doctors. What's this now?
If there's any in the chat, I apologize, but there is this kind of God complex that comes along with it. And you're probably right. How in the world would she dare to cheat on Dr. Gerhardt Konig, the Dr. Gerhardt Konig?
Right.
And I think that's going all the way to the point that his testimony right now, I think, is about him continuing to air his grievances. I will not be surprised if the rest of this testimony has to do with how hurt and how harmed and injured and victimized he was by her before they get to the part about, I bashed her head with a rock 10 times. A volcanic rock, by the way. You ever seen one of those? Not pleasant. As far as rocks go, not a pleasant rock.
Yeah, I mean, of course. The idea, look, if he's convicted, and we don't know if he's going to be, we're making light of it a little bit, but, a terrible thing. I mean, the woman here, think about what it must have been like for her. She's on the edge of this cliff. And by the way, she suspected him already, because he told her, stand by the cliff, I want to take a photo of you. And she was leery of that, which probably saved her life, because she was a little cautious, and as a result, she had a little bit of room to maneuver. Otherwise, if she had just blithely said, okay, right here, honey, it may never have come to fruition here. We may never have known, because it would have come down to some forensic deep dive, and it's very hard to distinguish between injuries from, exactly. How did she get this injury, et cetera? So there's all of that. He brought the syringe, arguably, ostensibly, allegedly, as a backup, I guess, and then he turns to a rock that happens to be there. Think about her. This is a guy she married. She has 2 kids with. He's on top of her, bashing her head in with a rock. She knows she's fighting for her life. She's screaming like crazy. And it's because what? His ego wouldn't allow them to get divorced. And by the way, we're kind of being very jaded about the idea that, she probably did have a physical affair, but it doesn't mean that she deserved this. You know what? Maybe she didn't. maybe she had a kind of work husband. We've all had that, right? I had about 5 work wives down through my, career, whether you like it or not. That happens if you work with.
You better not go on a hike with your wife anytime soon.
Yeah, she's sitting right over here. She knows all that. Because I used to complain to her. I used to say, "Oh, this one's driving me crazy. She's my work wife. She's calling me at home, wants to know what to do." This is what happens when you're the boss. But bottom line is that doesn't mean that you are like having some terrible affair. It's just how it is, So I think that if you think about what it must have been like for her, she's thinking to herself, all right, look, I had this guy, I leaned on him a little bit too much at work for whatever reason. My marriage hasn't been great. This doctor is a bit of a cold fish, whatever the circumstances were. Now he's trying to bash my head in on a rock, on a cliff here in Maui or wherever it was in Hawaii. What a terrible, terrible, horrific moment. Like, thank God she survived, but that's got to be something that keeps her up at night.
Oh, yeah. On her birthday, no less. It was her birthday.
Well, yeah, that's right. It was a birthday hike. Yeah.
On her birthday for this nice little present. And you're right. In those moments when she's stepping closer to the cliff, she's thinking to herself, something's not right here. God, what a change around.
And I mean, it's so cold. I mean, that is some cold stuff, man. Yeah. Anyway.
Julia Miller, thank you so much for gifting the memberships. Appreciate you, Julia. Susan Riley, thank you for the super chat, says, Paul, you're my favorite, and a bunch of juice boxes. Just curious, are you related to the late and great Ray Liotta? I caught that sip. What are you drinking, sir? Haha. Get your merch, CC fam. You won't be disappointed. She wants to know.
I'm drinking. What does she want to know? Say it again.
She wants to know what you're drinking. She wants to know.
Right.
Yeah.
This is whatever wine the wife gave me. I think
Melba.
Silver. It's wine. It's red wine. Whatever. Listen, don't give me too much credit. I'm not that much of a connoisseur. The wife buys great wine. Somehow or other, it never makes it to me. I don't know how that happens, but and anyway. And by the way, I got to concur. Thank you for the kind words. I'm also my favorite as well.
And Heather Cooper Smith, thank you so much for the super sticker. All right. Up next is another case that you and I have been following very closely. Both on this channel and on Fox, is the Luigi Mangione case. And he was back in court today. The latest is that his attorneys, Karen and Mark Agnifilo, are asking for more time on the federal side because his state case just got set and the federal case was going to follow it on its heels. And they're saying we don't have enough time in between. But the judge said, fine, but I'm not giving you much. They want I think they only pushed it out by a month.
A month.
A month. Here's my question though to you is, this is probably the first time I've seen them kind of lose something. So far, this defense has been really successful. And I'm curious on your thoughts on that. They won on the state side to get it from a first degree down to a second degree. So he's not even looking at life in New York State. And then when he was looking at the death penalty on the federal side, they got that kicked out and that was dropped down.
Yeah.
They're really kind of running circles around both prosecution, state and federal in this case.
Let me push back a little bit, Counselor, because I think that at the end of the day, this is going probably how it should be. Now, truth in advertising here, I know a lot of the players involved. I don't know Mark Agnifilo. Karen I worked with when she was the number 2 at the Manhattan DA's office. And in the federal case, I worked a little bit against the judge. She used to have a different role. She was the head of the Department of Investigation here. I bring all of that up because the points I want to make, I think, are coming from a reasonably educated place. First of all, everybody involved here is a good lawyer. All right. They all know what they're doing, including the judge, by the way. And like I said, we were in a situation where it was a little bit adversarial. We were opponents a little bit on two sides of something. But that said, I never doubted her legal acumen. And I think, frankly, that her rulings on the federal side here have been entirely defensible. What she did federally is essentially knocked out the death penalty because they were using a pretty novel procedure, a pretty novel theory here to try to get in the federal murder charge so as to qualify for the death penalty. And just to short circuit it, what it really came down to is you had to categorize stalking as a crime of violence, as the prerequisite to charging the murder at the federal level, because federal, you don't really have a clear-cut murder statute. You need sort of an on-ramp on it. They call it the federal hook. You needed a federal hook to get to the murder charge, and it was a reach. They were using stalking. Now, did Mangione stalk Thompson? He did. But that doesn't necessarily mean that stalking is categorically a crime of violence. And what the defense did was they demonstrated that there are a lot of instances where stalking doesn't even involve violence. Sometimes the stalkee, the target, doesn't even know they're being stalked. And so consequently, how can that be violence? And ultimately, the judge, Margaret Garnett, bought that argument. That's the way she went. There's a little bit of a circuit split. There have been instances where it's gone the other way. I don't think this is ever getting up to the Supreme Court because the prosecution seems to have accepted it. It's not being appealed. So that's how it happened at the federal side. That said, she also came back, as you just articulated, and said, forget going into 2027 defense. I'll give you another month because a lot of the issues are the same. It's just procedural. There were two of you. You're married. So you know what? One take one side, one take the other. And there's no shortage of money here. Mangione's family's got money. And so I don't really want to hear that you need all the way into 2027. So as I said, federally, this seems to have gone right. It's not really hopeful for Mangione. If they got their hopes up, I wouldn't do that if I'm sitting where they are. I will say the death penalty is off the table. It was always shoehorned in a little bit to begin with. Seemed like the feds didn't want to be left out of this big case, and so they jumped in. It feels redundant to me at this point to the state case. Why? Because ultimately, at the federal level, they don't have a lot of faith in the Bragg office, Alvin Bragg here in Manhattan, to bring in the state case. Really, this is state murder charge here. But just to close the loop here on what you were talking about at the state level, the state I would fault here because I don't know what they did, but somehow or other they lost the terrorism charge. Now, again, truth in advertising. Me and my people were the first people to bring state-level terrorism charges post 9/11. I don't think it had ever been done. A lot of those statutes were stood up post 9/11 at the state level. Well, we were the first ones to test them out, and we brought 3 cases, all of them successful, because the charges were more amenable at the state level than the federal level. And it's really quite simple. You take a normal state charge, murder, and you just have an enhancement, they call it. And it's charged. This is literally how it reads in the indictment. Murder as a crime of terrorism. Now, what makes it terrorism? You did what you did for an ideological purpose to influence the population, civilian population, or the government. This guy, I've read the manifesto. This guy's actions dovetail entirely, 100%, with the state terrorism statute. And yet somehow or other, Bragg's case managed to lose that. And then when it came down against them, they immediately said, and we're not going to appeal. Now, that's crap. They should have appealed that. They mustn't have had the goods to appeal it because they must have blown it into grand jury or something. I don't know what they did, but that's not a good sign. So just to finish this soliloquy up here, I'm glad now, and at first I was quite skeptical, but I'm glad that the feds now have brought their case. Because from what I've seen at the state level and Alvin Bragg's office, there were good prosecutors in that office, that Bragg's office, don't get me wrong. But with that guy leading the charge, who's shown himself to be incapable of managing complex cases and has never seen a case he doesn't want to bury and walk away from, frankly, I'm glad the feds are in this, and I have more faith in the current DOJ than I do in Bragg's office.
Yeah. I mean, to that, just to kind of go off of your point there about the terrorism, if it wasn't for the purposes of terrorism, the purposes of ideology, what was it for?
Exactly.
What was he killing this person for? Now, you could say, well, listen, people can have unmotivated, random acts of violence all the time. Sure. Is that what you're saying this was? Are you saying this was just a random, unmotivated murder? No, of course it was a systematic hunt down of a person purely because of who that person was. He didn't have any relationship to this man. He didn't have any relationship to Brian.
Josh, he says it. He says it in the manifesto. No. He literally says, I'm doing this to wake everybody. He says things like, I don't remember the exact wording, but he says things like, I'm doing this to wake everybody up. This would get me more clout. This will get me more attention if I kill the CEO, as opposed to trying to bomb the whole meeting, because remember, it was the shareholders meeting that was going on. Thompson was walking to the shareholders meeting. So he literally says it in the manifesto, which he had on him with the gun when they got him, which, by the way, is going to come in. Don't believe any of the stuff that's not coming in. And then furthermore, when they grabbed him, he started yelling stuff like, "This is my lived experience," because he claims he had a back injury that was never treated. Listen, this fit squarely within the four corners of the terrorism statute, and they just didn't like it because politically it didn't work for them. And I think, frankly, they tanked the terrorism charge. That's my assessment, my opinion. And I think as a result, you got to really question whether the state prosecutors here really have their hearts in this. I'm sorry, but I don't like doing that because I know a lot of good people still over there. But I have more faith in the Feds slam dunking this, and more power to them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to your point too, just to close this whole point out, on the Fed side with that judge, the judge, when dismissing the stalking as it relates to being a violent crime and therefore the murder, said in her opinion, this seems like a bad result.
Yeah, she says that.
Like she didn't want to arrive at this result, but this is the landscape of the law as she finds it. And I agree with you that I think she did get it right. And if you've got a gripe with it, her point is kind of like, take it up with the Supreme Court. I'm just doing what the law currently is. But that judge in the state side, I think, I mean, I don't know how you say this is not ideologically driven when every single time he's in court, the courtroom is surrounded by a bunch of people cheering him on with posters. The whole thing is it is such a clearly ideologically driven murder. It's very frustrating, and I agree with you. The prosecution didn't just drop the ball. They never really wanted to play. It
feels that way. Yeah. It really does feel. And then listen, if Mangione's name had been Abu Muhammad Mangione, there would have been no question about it, because that's just what they think of as terrorism, and the grooves are all established. This didn't work for them. They don't like the ideology of charging terrorism here for something that I don't know what drove them here, but I don't know how you blow this. And frankly, I don't know how you lose that and not appeal. I would have filed that appeal the next day. I would have said, well, we're going up over to the Second Circuit on this, and we're going to do an interlock appeal, because this is so. Only thing I can think is, like I said, they didn't get into evidence what they needed, and I didn't see that in the judge's opinion. The judge's opinion was very, very thin.
It was illegal. It was based on he didn't feel it applied. Not that they didn't have to apply it. He just didn't feel it applied.
He didn't feel it applied. I mean, it's ridiculous. I wouldn't have been able to constrain myself from appealing that. But just the fact that they laid down for that, to me, was really, really telling. And they did it very quietly, by the way. I was waiting. I was watching. So let me see if they appeal this. I made a couple of calls. No decision yet. I'm waiting. And then very quietly, they made an announcement in an obscure publication. I forget where it was. We accept the judge's decision, and we're not going to appeal this. And that's a real chicken blank way about, going about it. And look, I get it. Sometimes you don't want to annoy the judge. You're going to be with this judge for the length of the case. You go up over his head on an appeal and you win. Now the judge hates you. I get all of that. But the bottom line is the shooting's on film. The guy had the gun and the manifesto with him. Who cares if you piss off the judge? Let the judge worry about pissing off the population that he's supposed to be protecting. It's a real nonsensical call, and it's a failure from where I sit on the part of the DA's office. But this DA's office, frankly, is used to failure.
Yeah. Amen. Ali Foley says, should we update the definition of terrorism, specifically domestic terrorism? It feels like there are too many holes in what we currently use.
Good question.
I think that probably we should, but at the same time, the law as it is, I think, still applied. It wasn't like a problem with the law. It was a problem with their application of it. But it is the way that the law is written. You would think it would be a little bit more straightforward as to what it would apply to as far as terrorism.
Well, let me answer that question. I'm actually in deep on this issue because I've written about it. State level, you're 100% right. Federally, we don't have a domestic terrorism law. Now, reasonable minds can disagree about this. People on the right don't want it because they think it's going to be used against them. That is to say, in the same way that we saw DOJ categorize other Catholics as being an imminent domestic terrorism threat because it's adjacent to white supremacism, whatever that nonsense memo that they put out, that DHS, I think, put out actually. They're afraid of that sort of dynamic. I get that. However, why would you not advocate for a good law because you're afraid it's going to be misused?
Right.
You're better off putting in a good law and making sure it's not misused through a normal mechanism, right? I mean, come on. And what I would argue,
never going to write laws.
And what I would argue is just to do it the same way the states have done it, because it's so simple. If you do a federal crime plus an and you can enumerate those crimes. They're crimes of violence, some money crimes, moving money, support, and all that kind of stuff. But if you do a federal crime and you cross state lines, you get federal jurisdictions, obviously, or somehow or other you get federal jurisdiction, and it's for an ideological purpose, equals terrorism. The crime, ideological, equals terrorism. That's how it works on the state level. And by the way, that's how it works on the federal level with hate crimes. So it's not like you're inventing the wheel here. You're not reinventing anything. Just take what we do with with federal hate crimes and use it that way for terrorism. And cases like this, cases like where the guy ran over the people in the parade up in Waukesha. I don't know if you remember that. There was like a New Year's parade. And the guy drove the car. A stone terrorism case. They wouldn't charge it that way federally because it didn't fit. I could go down the line. There's a series of these that they have to bend over backwards to slot them in because they don't really work. This is not what you want, because what you're really trying to then do is force something. And you know better than anybody as an experienced prosecutor and defense attorney, when you force a charge, you're opening yourself up to vulnerabilities that good defense attorneys are going to see. And that's what happened, and so many, I don't want to bore the audience with it, but there's a lot of cases where if you force a charge, it goes south. And that's what happened in this case with Margaret Garnett at the federal level. They tried to force this stalking charge in as the on-ramp, and she called BS.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happens. Is the judge is going to have to call you on it.
That's right.
Therapist, thank you so much for gifting the membership. Appreciate you and your support. Shy Gal, thank you for super chat, says, we love having you. Did Josh send you merch yet? Oh, I just got called out.
Josh hasn't sent me ugats. All right. The day I get a cup of coffee out of this guy, typical LA, nothing I get.
Are you going to Crime Con?
I'm going to Crime Con. Yeah. You're going to buy me a drink at Crime Con. What are you going to buy me? As long as it's paying, right?
You're going to get specialized Courtroom Confidential Crime Con merch. I will bring you a shirt.
I'll believe that when I'm wearing it. All right. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
All right.
And a glass of red wine.
Yeah, please.
Paul, you're the absolute best. We got a show coming up on Friday.
Yes.
Weekly Rap Sheet. We're talking about Gerhardt. I know we're talking about, I think we're talking about Tiger Woods. You're going to cover some other stuff. What else are we got?
Yeah, so I'm going to do a rundown of cases that we all have been looking at. The Gilgo case, for instance, looks like it's going to a plea as that. There's some movement in Tyler Robinson. I'm going to update on that. We're going to do Mangione, as we just did just now. Series of, I forget what the others are, but we're going to do a few cases that are bubbling up that everybody's kind of paying attention to. That'll be my segment. And then we're going to do, obviously, what you and the great Donna Rotuno do. Look, the show's doing really well. So if you don't have Fox Nation, you got to check it out. You can watch us argue legal points. Of course, I win. And you get to see all of that on your TV. So tune in, please.
We'll have mute button, though, which seems unfair that he just mutes us every time we really get rolling and we can't fire back at him.
I know. It's disgraceful.
This is Leslie B. Thank you so much. Says buying Paul a drink at CrimeCon. So see there, it's already purchased. Now I'm going on here legless, huh? I'll blame you guys.
Mauro seems a little banged up. What happened? Josh and Leslie.
If you've got questions about those cases, everybody, email us at theweeklyrapsheet@fox.com. We answer them on the air. We would love hearing from all of you. So, my friend, I will see you on Friday.
Outstanding. I'll see you then. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, Paul. Good to see you, buddy.
All right, man. Bye.
There he was, the fabulous Paul Mauro. Like I said, if you want to hear more of that, check us out this Friday on the weekly rap sheet. More to come on the Konig case. And we'll be able to break down actually some of that testimony that took place this afternoon. We appreciate all of you being here. I know that was going on during some of at least our live this evening. That the email is theweeklyrapsheet@fox.com. So please send us your questions there. John Moore says, I think Paul is juiced tonight. I think he is too. I think in more ways than one. All right, we got a poll coming up. Again, your options were, number one, where am I here? Number one, Lindsay Clancy. Number two, Shanna Gardner. And number three, Ted Bundy. Bice says Paul is the great guest. I agree. Court Dog Daniel, one of my dudes, says, Josh, how did you meet Paul? Oh, great question. I met him through, actually, the first time we met is Fox has a true crime podcast called I think it's just called the Fox True Crime Podcast. And he was hosting it one time and I was a guest. And that was the first time we met. And I've been laughing ever since then. So, all right. Drum roll, please. Kaylin, who won our contest this evening? Who won our poll? She's giving me the one finger, the one hold up, Ritter. Calm, the cool your jets finger is what I'm getting from Kaylin. Lindsay Clancy. Oh, it's a tie between Shanna Gardner and Ted Bundy. Okay, we've got time for both of those. Let's do it. Shanna Gardner and Ted Bundy. Let's do. Should we do it in? Let's do it in that order. Let's do Shanna Gardner first. So this is interesting. So if you remember, Shanna Gardner, along with her now estranged and I suppose ex-husband Mario Fernandez, plotted and in fact hired someone allegedly to murder her former ex-husband, Jared Bridegan, who she shares 2 children with. That person was named Henry Tenon. Henry Tenon, according to the prosecution, put a tire in the road where he knew Jared would be driving. When Jared got out of his vehicle in the middle of the night to move that tire, Henry Tenon gunned him down. This was done in front of their, I believe she was 2 years old at the time. Was she 2-year-old daughter? That is a baby who is just beginning to speak. And when she does speak to responding officers, to the gunshots, she says something along the lines of "Daddy's hurt." And that has broken my heart since the moment I heard that and continues to break my heart. I just hope that this little girl doesn't have memories of that haunt her for the rest of her life. But originally, Shanna and Mario were going to be tried together, and Henry, the gunman, was cooperating, and he was going to get a deal. And it was, by the way, a very good deal from the prosecution. He was looking at, I think, a 2nd-degree murder with the idea of him perhaps one day seeing the outside of a prison if he would cooperate and testify against Shanna and Mario. That was good for him and very good for the prosecution, because now they've got the guy to point the finger at the people who are a couple of degrees removed from the crime itself, but the actual masterminds. I mean, if you want to, honestly, from a culpability, from a criminal mindset perspective, as bad as Henry Tenon is, the real evil folks here are Shanna and Mario. They're the ones who plotted this. They're the ones that wanted this man dead. They may not have pulled the trigger, but they're the masterminds behind it. Well, somebody got in Henry's ear. And my personal suspicions on this are that some jailhouse lawyer got in his ear and said, "What are you doing? Why are you cooperating with the government? You know they can't put this case together without you. If you don't testify, all of you are going to go free. They're not giving you a good deal. They're railroading you, blah, blah, blah," and on and on and on and on. If my suspicions are true, or even if they're not, for whatever reason, he has decided he doesn't want the deal and he wants to go to trial. So now he's looking at the rest of his life in prison. They have taken the death penalty off the table. Maybe they regret that decision now, but they're going to throw the entire book at this guy. And I still think they put together the case with or without him cooperating. Do they got to go through a few more extra steps? Sure. Are they going to be able to get there? Sure. And they're certainly going to be able to get Henry because they've got the physical evidence linking him to it. Just blows my mind. But because of all of that, now we've got some issues. How do we do this trial? Do we do everybody together or not? Well, the prosecution has said that they want to try Tenon separate from Mauro and Shanna, but they're asking to not sever Shanna's and Mario's trial, but to select their jury separate together, but then bring her jury back or his jury back at a later time and actually put on their cases differently. First of all, I've never heard of this before. The reason why these issues are at play is that whenever you've got co-defendants, you're always going to have to worry about hearsay, testimonial issues. If one defendant is saying things, you can use that testimony against that defendant. That's party admission. Paul was talking about that earlier. But when you've got two defendants, you can't use, in other words, if Mario's saying something, you can use it against Mauro, but you can't use it against Shanna. So how do you handle that? It would be inadmissible against her, but admissible against him. Well, you do dual juries. And what you do is you bring in two juries sit through the vast majority of the trial, but when it's for the parts where only Mario's jury can hear it or only Shanna's jury can hear it, you have the other jury excused and you kind of wall them off from each other and then they deliberate separately. The prosecution is saying, however, that there would be so much of that, so much juggling of that we don't want to, we need to do these entirely separately. And so the judge came back to them and said, okay, well then what you're talking about is separate trials. And they're saying, no. We don't want separate trials. We want to pick the jury on the same day and we'll pick two juries, but then we'll just have one jury come back completely at a later date rather than shuffle the juries in and out. I kind of understand their logic behind this, but the judge is saying, no. What you're asking for is separate trials. And you're just disguising it as the same trial by picking a jury on the same day. And she's saying, if that's what you're asking, then you can't agree to do it. You have to make an motion to do it, and I have to rule on it. Now, why do all of these semantics and, is it the same jury? Is it not? If they all agree, what's the problem? It's because of appealable issues. It's because if the judge doesn't get this right, that's going to create appealable issues. And part of the concern is, well, if you pick a jury and then you ask them to come back 3 weeks later, what if some of the people say, hey, some stuff came up in my life in 3 weeks. I can't serve on this jury anymore. I think the way they should handle it is just do them separately. Pick a jury, try one person, pick a jury, try another person. The time that you save by picking the two juries together, to me, is not going to be all that much time because you're still picking two juries at the same time to begin with. And I know I'm already confusing myself, but I hope you guys are able to follow this. They want to pick two juries at the same time. To me, that involves the same amount of questioning as if you pick two juries separately. And Teresa So's Stuff and Things agrees with me. So there you go. Anyhow, because of all of that, you could see how this case that was fairly straightforward is starting to become more and more complex with each passing moment. Court Dog Daniel says she gets a huge advantage if it's separate trials because she would go second. I don't know. I see what you're saying there. Perhaps she gets the advantage of having seen what the prosecution does the first time around. I don't know if there's necessarily any surprises, though, coming from the prosecution. I think things are probably going to play out. What she does get the advantage of, though, if it's the second time around, is that there's going to be the sworn testimony of many of the same witnesses who are going to testify again. The other thing I don't understand is why they can't just do this the way I originally described, which is with two juries at the same time and excuse them. And so be it. If that happens to be, we're going to do a week's worth of one jury being excused and the other one in here, I still think it's the tried and true, safer and easier way to handle this whole thing. Anyhow, that is what's happening with her case. The judge is waiting for them to all come back. The next court date is April 9th. The judge said, file a motion so that I can actually rule on this thing. And trial is currently set for August of this year. So we'll see if all of this nonsense kind of delays the trial. But this is one of those trials that I hope gets going, because I'm really interested to see how this thing works out. It's going to be a fascinating trial, too, because whenever you've got these trials with it's a murder for hire and the actual people who hired are nowhere around, that's an interesting case for the prosecution to have to piece together. How are they going to do that? And now, especially when you don't have Tenon, the trigger guy, cooperating, how are they? It's going to be a lot of dots they need to connect. And that always makes for a very interesting trial. Mike, thank you so much for supporting the mods with coffees. Appreciate you. And, oh, okay. Let's move on to our next one. All right. Ted Bundy. Who would have thought we'd be talking about this case on this channel here? Here's the latest. Laura Ann Amy, who was 17 years old, disappeared in Lehigh after a Halloween party in 1974. Her body was discovered in November 27th, 1974 by hikers. Ted Bundy happened to be studying law at the University of Utah at the time. This is, if you guys have ever looked into the case of Ted Bundy, like there's that excellent book, what is it, The Murderer Beside Me, or the Killer Beside Me. Excellent book on this. It is fascinating about him in that he was such a high functioning person while he was doing these absolutely horrific crimes. Very smart guy. Went to law school. The Stranger Beside Me. Went to law school. Graduated from law school. Defended himself at one point during trial. Escaped from jail at one point. I mean, the guy, it's just got everything involved in it. Yeah, Anne Rule. Thank you, guys. Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. It's kind of one of those early true crime books that is well worth reading and absolutely still holds up to this day. Anyhow, he confessed in 1989, prior to being executed in Florida. He confessed to this murder, but they didn't charge him with it because they didn't have enough to corroborate his confession. And that just brings out kind of an interesting point. That oftentimes you'll hear about Green River Killer famously confessed to, I don't know how many hundreds of murders or stuff like that. Sometimes these guys want the prestige. They feel like the walls have closed in. They're going to prison. They're likely going to the death chamber. Then they want to go in as one of the most prolific killers that can be, and they start admitting to all sorts of stuff. We've seen this phenomenon before, and the bad part about it is when you get some of these, not so much anymore, but it used to be that you get some of these jurisdictions where these cops would kind of want to clear some of these unsolved cases and get them off their books and get this guy to confess to something. Here you see it done the right way. He confessed to something, and they're like, we can't corroborate his confession. There's a concept in the law called the corpus cop-out rule, which is the idea that if you confess to something, there has to be something corroborating that and linking you to that crime other than just your confession. Sometimes inherent in the confession can be enough evidence. In other words, are they telling you information that only the killer would know? That could be the corroboration enough. Here, they didn't feel that they had it until just recently when Sergeant Mike Reynolds reopened the case again and did some retesting on this whole thing. So I want to play you a clip from Sergeant Mike Reynolds, and then we're going to have a clip from Amy's younger sister, who's now much older, talking about this and how this thing all played out.
Laura Amy is the quintessential daughter of Utah County, and we felt the pain that the family feels when she was taken. We felt the pain that you felt this whole entire time, and we've had a desire to deliver to you some type of healing. And I know I can't really say the word closure, but some type of healing, and hopefully we've brought that.
What I like about this too is that many people could say, why are you spending time on this? Bundy's dead. You're not going to have a trial. What's the point in doing this? Why even reopen it? Why spend the resources? Because what they were able to do is they were able to take genetic material from the crime scene, retest it, run it through CODIS, and it came back to Bundy incredibly. But I like that he did that. It is sometimes about, your job doesn't necessarily end just because your prime suspect is dead. Sometimes this is about doing right by the victims, even if that's decades later. So here is from Michelle Impala. This is Amy's younger sister.
Again, I thank you, everybody that's here, for being here. It's really quite amazing that people even are still interested in Laura's case. But I appreciate it, and I really appreciate the evidence team and Jake and Mike and you guys for even it being so passionate for you to close. And so I know I speak for my family when I thank you, and thank you media too for even caring. That's it.
See, that's why. You see that? This is decades later. You can see how emotionally still this is for her and these family members. I love it. I love it. I mean, to me, resources, whatever, be damned. Doing right should be the goal of law enforcement. Doing right, and I think that they've done that here. And we also got a little bit of a tease from Utah County Sheriff Mike Smith, who said that his office may be close to closing another case that may be linked to Bundy. So we might be talking about this again in the future. So pretty incredible stuff. Have you guys enjoyed this evening? Please don't go anywhere. We have some announcements for you, but I thought I really want to thank Paul again for being on tonight. He's such a treat. Did you guys enjoy that? Were you juiced? Were you sufficiently juiced by your dose of Paul for this evening? I hope so. Oh, I guess not. Oh, apparently no. Oh, what is going on? What is going on here? What kind of outrageous BS is this? This can't be right. Is this a flaw with the thing? Okay, somebody broke the machine. Somebody broke the Juice-O-Meter 2000. Why are you putting me in? Oh, Nightbot is having an April Fool's joke. Get it? the ladies really enjoyed that. April Fools. April Fools. All right. Well, I'm still traumatized by it, so I hope it was worth it to all of you. Can I tell you something that's not a joke? And that is, I did get God. I was really bothered for a second there. That is thecourtroomconfidential.com. At thecourtroomconfidential.com, you will find, first of all, messages. If you want to leave us a message, if you would like to ask a question about something dealing with true crime, one of the cases we're following, a legal question, ask us a question leave us a message at thecourtroomconfidential.com, and we will answer that on Sunday. A lot of gifted memberships tonight. Thank you guys so much for all of that. Always appreciate those gifted memberships. If you didn't receive the one and you still want to become a member, then go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and you can find out about joining the CC crew and all the benefits of that. And then merch. So last week, there was a special request that they wanted us to bring back a special edition of a shirt that we had. Well, we heard you, we listened, and for a very limited time, we would like to introduce to you Lemon Pound Cake Yellow, available now. And it's not a joke. Now through what? Sunday? Is that what we decided to do? For a limited time, if you would like Lemon Pound Cake Yellow from Courtroom Confidential, it is available to you in the shop at thecourtroomconfidential.com. Get it while it's hot, everybody. Until the end of day Sunday. Is that the deadline? Now till the end of day Sunday. All right. What did you miss this week? Well, on Monday, you may have missed our Monday night special. We had Chris McDonough from the interview room on, and we talked about Barry Morphew. We talked about Tyler Robinson, Caleb Flynn. Really great conversation on that. Please check that out. Stay tuned. Tomorrow, if you are not a member, you might not know about this, but if you are a member, then you know the hottest new show on YouTube is Tea Time with Tiff. Members only at 6 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Why so late? 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. This Thursday, Tea Time with Tiff. Members only, though. Sorry, folks. There's a price to admission for this one. So please join up to watch Tea Time with Tiff tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Then on Friday, as I already said, the weekly rap sheet is coming up on Fox Nation. I will be doing that alongside Paul, who you saw here this evening, and Donna Rotuno. That will be at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So please check that out. Leave us your questions at the weekly rap sheet at fox.com. Are they still running their spring special? I think that they are. So if you're not a subscriber to Fox Nation, they have their spring sale going on right now, which is at a reduced price. Please check that out. Then, not on Friday, on Saturday. So this is one of the things that the programming changes we wanted you to be aware of, is that we will be moving our weekly roundup for this week only to Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 5 p.m. British summertime. So for all of you in the UK, please enjoy that early evening episode of the weekly roundup this Saturday. And we will have, yes, I'm getting to it. We will be having our special guest, Scott from Recovery Addict, will be joining us. Jeez Louise. So please don't miss out. Scott, who's been watching the Gerhardt Konig case daily. I'd love to hear his insights on this thing, because I know today was a real doozy and I want to hear his thoughts. And then on Sunday, here's the bad news. And again, I know it's April 1st and I know you're all waiting for the joke. Well, this is also no joke. No Sunday Fun Day. We wish you all a very happy Easter, but there will be no Sunday Fun Day. Why is that? Well, we were going to bring you a 5 things you need to know about Courtney Clenny, but as we were informed earlier this evening, trial got pushed back from April to August. So we're going to bring you that episode closer to trial so that it's more meaningful to all of you. And instead, just give you all of Sunday off to chase down bunnies and find eggs and eat candy and color eggs and do whatever other wonderful things you do on a Sunday. CrimeCon is coming up, everybody. As you heard, Paul will be there. We're going to be actually doing a live episode from CrimeCon, I believe, of the weekly rap sheet is kind of one of the plans that's in the works. So please check that out. That will be this May 29th through 31st in Las Vegas. Discount code courtroom, all caps, all one word, for 10% off. And starting today, April 1st. It's available, everybody. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com, click on the shop, or you need a code, I guess it is. For members only, starting today, you'll have the opportunity to buy this shirt that I'm wearing right now. I'd show you the back if I could figure out how to do that without pulling up a muscle, but it looks like that on the back, and we're very proud of it. And it's co-branded along with Crime Con, and I'm just going to say it. It's a collector's item. If you want to get your hands on this collector's item, it's available to you if you're a member right now. Always bet on CC Black. See, Alicia K. Mayo, very, very clever. CC is back in black. There you go. Very good. Black Letter Law. Paint it black. Very good. Very well done, guys. Mike, thank you again so much for supporting the mods with coffees. All right. I may be tired. I may be in a different time zone. It may be the end of a very long day, but we're not going to skip the name game. You guys all ready? Take a deep breath. Let me have some water. Carolyn Keel has been a member for 7 months, everybody. Happy crewversary. It's a shame it took so long to solve this, but I'm glad they finally did. Yeah, talking about that case with Ted Bundy. I am too. All right. Here we go. Let me thank the following new members: to Patrice Crockett, Classy Lass, Ice Pick, Mindy Lou Who, Krabby Z, Laura Wade, Nico, Laura Morgan, Flynn Nurse, Flory 148, M. Osland, Jules 1008, Mindy Martinable, Aviation for Planes, K123 Candy, Jen Loves to Quilt, Evett Buck, Aiden Powell, Richard Freeman, Emmeline Neal, Carol Lee Mueller, Let's Do This Please 22, Melissa K, Meg NM, Vix Logic, Sunny Ways, Liz Ratraz, Shauna Peterson, and Scott 88. You guys are all fantastic. Thank you so much for being a part of our crew. Special thank you to Paul Mauro for coming on tonight. He's such a treat. I'm a big fan of him, and I know you guys are as well. Special thank you to Afton, Shy Gal, Kathy, and Therapist. You know, I'm still a little disappointed in myself that I actually fell for that joke. I was honestly sitting here going, really? This many in a row? That's like, in my head, I'm doing like the whole, how many times can you flip a coin and it come up heads? This doesn't seem right. Well done, everybody. Afton, Shy Gal, Kathy, and Therapist, you know, thank you so much for being the best mods on YouTube. And that is no joke. Kaylin, you're the best. Tiffany, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you all so much, everybody. We will see you all on Saturday. Take care.